you don't know the rules, you could be paying a tax bill that you never expected. Most people think that if their business owes taxes, the IRS or the state can't come after them personally. Wrong. In some cases, the IRS and the state can pierce right through the corporate veil and drain your bank account, seize your assets, and garnish your wages. Stick with me for the next few minutes, and I'll break down exactly when you are personally liable for IRS and state business tax debt, when you're not, and the surprise situations where people get blindsided most often. My name is Brad Paladini. I'm a tax attorney. For the past 10 plus years, I've helped business owners and individuals fight IRS and state tax authorities. I've seen the IRS come after everyone from the president of a big corporation to a lowly employee. And if you don't fight it on time, you could be out of luck. So when are you personally liable for business tax debt? It comes down to what we call trust taxes. So there's two main types of trust taxes. One is payroll tax. So when you are paying your employees, you are withholding on their behalf a portion of the taxes and turning them over to the IRS or the state for their benefit. When you don't do that, the IRS and the state treat it like you are stealing. The second scenario is sales tax. If you have a store and you are collecting sales tax, your customer is paying that sales tax. You are simply holding it for them and you are turning it over to the state. If you are using that money to pay your rent or pay yourself, you are stealing the sales tax and the state will hold you personally liable for that debt. If your business just owes income taxes, so it's a C corporation and maybe it hasn't paid all of its income tax, the IRS and the state typically will not go after you personally for that debt. It's only in situations where we are dealing with trust fund taxes like payroll and sales tax where they will come after you personally. So let's talk about some scenarios where people get blindsided. I had a case years ago where I represented a secretary of a company. She was the person at the front desk. Part of her job was secretary, part of her job was receptionist, and the IRS was trying to hold her personally liable for over $200,000 in unpaid payroll tax debt. Why? Well, because her boss was often out of the office, and while he was out of the office, she would be the one signing checks. And as part of the IRS's investigation, they were able to subpoena all of the canceled checks, saw that she had the authority to sign checks, and tried to go after her personally. The second situation I see commonly is a minority member or a minority shareholder in the business. So it's someone who's not really active in the day-to-day operations. Maybe they just invested some cash up front. But again, as part of the IRS or the state's investigation, they see that you are an owner and they're going to try and come after you personally for the unpaid payroll tax debt or the unpaid sales tax debt. Third situation. I hate this situation more than anything. The first time I saw it, I was shocked. I've probably seen it 50 times since then. Every time I have a case like this, it drives me crazy. Here's the situation. Someone starts a business, but for some brilliant reason, rather than putting it in their name, they put it in someone else's name, like their spouse or their cousin or their friend. Why do people do this? Maybe you have really poor credit. Maybe your friend is a minority and they will get minority status for the business. Maybe there's some immigration issues where you don't want your name on the business. So they will put it in the name of a spouse, a friend, a family member. They don't pay the sales tax. They don't pay the payroll tax. But who does the IRS or the state come after? It's the person whose name is on the business. They may have nothing to do with the business. They have maybe never visited the location. Maybe they have a stamp for their signature and never actually signed a check or actually signed a return. It doesn't really matter. The IRS or the state is still going to pursue whoever the owner is on paper. And those are basically cases to fight sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But if someone asks for you to put your name on a piece of paper saying that you're an owner, please don't do it. I've seen it more times than I would like. So how do you avoid getting blindsided? If you work for a company and you are paying bills on its behalf, you always have to pay the payroll and the sales tax first. People want to pay the rent because they don't want to get evicted. They want to pay the utility bill because they got to keep the lights on. But these are the most important debts that the business needs to pay. So they should get the highest priority before any other vendor. If you owe any other vendor money, typically they're going to have to go to court and get a judgment before they could levy your bank account, garnish your wages, or anything like that. IRS and the state don't need to do those things. They have special mechanisms where they can bypass the court system and directly garnish your wages, directly levy your bank accounts. If the IRS or the state is accusing you of being a responsible person for a business, you need to fight it immediately. I've had so many cases over the years where somebody will hire me 5, 10, 15 years after the fact and ask me to get them out of the responsible person status. It's way more difficult to deal with 5 or 10 years later than to deal with it when you get the initial notice accusing you of being a responsible person for the business. Last, if you're asked by the business owner to sign checks or pay bills, you need to understand the risk that comes with it. Again, the IRS sees your name on a check and you are making payments. They're going to do an investigation where there's unpaid payroll taxes to see if they can hold you personally responsible. So, are you personally liable for business tax debt? The answer is sometimes. It's got to be sales tax or it's got to be payroll tax, and you have to be a responsible person for the business, or the IRS or the state have to think you're a responsible person for the business, even if you're really not. If you need a tax attorney for your situation, you can book a discovery call in the link below. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Really helps us out.